Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode I'm asking the question, is the Mac Mini dead? Now, the reason I'm asking this question is because, like most of you, I look at a lot of YouTube videos, and I was looking at some reviews of the 2014 and the 2015 Mac Mini, basically the same machine. And most of the reviews were pretty negative, and people were very upset with the fact that the Mac Mini is no longer very easily user configurable. In other words, you can't really add memory, and it's pretty hard to change the hard drive. And they were saying that the Mac Mini had kind of lost its use. Well, I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, maybe for the moderate or power user, but what about the typical user? And so I surveyed a bunch of people, and these people included folks in junior high, high school, and college, plus people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now you might say, well, why didn't you interview people in their mid-20s and 30s? Well, because I couldn't find any. So I interviewed those people, and these are what I would call frequent computer users, but not power users. And so I asked them, what do you use a computer for? And really, a lot of simple stuff. So they said that probably number one, they use the computer for web surfing, whether that's reading a blog or finding a recipe or checking on the news or whatever. Number two was probably video streaming, like YouTube or maybe Amazon Prime or Netflix and different programs or options like that. Number three were the office suites, and typically most commonly just the Word type office suites. So whether that was Word or Pages or whether that was PowerPoint or Keynote, but people used those types of programs quite a bit. People, of course, read email, but surprisingly, a large percentage of individuals that I surveyed check their email on their phones, at least for their non-business email. A lot of people also manage their music on their computer, and this was typically through something like iTunes, and where they would make playlists and then play it back on their phone or their MP3 player. Most individuals that played games played very simple games, and those people that played more complex games pretty much said they don't use Macs anyways. They would want a Windows computer. And that really was one person in my survey who happened to be my son, who likes playing games and he has a Windows computer. Also, individuals said they used the calendar and appointment book. There was actually a smaller percentage than I thought. I'm a big calendar and appointment book user too, but honestly, I do most of that on my phone nowadays, although I sometimes do use my computer. Believe it or not, there were individuals that still use instant messaging, and of course you have that on the Mac with the instant message application there, or lots of other applications that you can get. And the big user I found out was my daughter, who's at a boarding school, and she tends to use Skype instant messaging because all of her friends are on laptops. They use laptops for all of their classes, and so they can basically write notes back and forth. And then there were the few rare individuals who did very simple photo editing. And these included a person in her late 60s who occasionally will edit a photo, and it also included my kids who will occasionally edit a photo that they need for a class or something. Not too many people do it though. And then some very rare movie editing. And here again, this was mostly the high schoolers out there and the college kids that needed to edit maybe a 20 or 30-second clip that they could throw into a PowerPoint. So again, very simple movie editing. So can you do all of those things on the baseline Mac Mini? Well, what I did was something a little different. So the baseline Mac Mini has what does it have? It has a 1.4 processor that can boost up to 2.7. It comes with 4 GB of RAM, and it's under $500. For $100 more, you can go up to 8 GB of RAM, which I certainly would recommend. But we're talking about, even in the most basic configuration, a real Mac computer for under $500. So I don't have a 2015 Mac Mini, but I do have an early 2009 Mac Mini. And this was a Mac Mini that I did upgrade a bit when I bought it. It was my first Mac, and it had a 2 gigahertz processor, dual core, and I upgraded the RAM to 4 gigabytes of RAM. And so that, and it had a 500 gigabyte hard drive at 5400 RPM, and so your basic Mac. And certainly that Mac that I had in 2009 would not compare to the base Mac now, because of course processors have improved and chipsets have improved, and so even a 1.4 gigahertz dual core in today's times in 2015 is going to be a lot faster than a 2 gigahertz dual core in 2009. So I looked at all these different options and I ran them on my old 2009 Mac Mini. And guess what? I was able to do every single one of them without any difficulty. Now, I wasn't editing 4K video, and I wasn't using Photoshop with multiple layers. I was using just the photo app that comes with the Mac, and I was using just simple Office Mac or Office programs and that sort of thing. And indeed, they did run a little slower, or maybe even significantly slower than my MacBook Pro with Retina display, but they weren't agonizingly slow, and they worked great. So I do think there is a place for the Mac Mini because it gives you something that you really can't get in a Windows computer at that price point. It gives you an incredibly durable and well-made machine that not only is small and very simple to use, but it's just loaded with free software. So if you don't have a Mac, of course, you might not know this, but you get a usable photo editor. You get a complete Office suite that is somewhat compatible with Word and is actually very, very good. You get a movie editor. You, of course, get web browsers. You get a calendar app, an appointment app. You get a list app, a map app, a FaceTime app, and on and on and on. All the things that you would ever need, and they're all optimized for your Mac, and of course that Mac Mini has to run those programs. So for all the simple tasks that I just mentioned, I think the Mac Mini is fine. Now, would I go out and buy a Mac Mini at the base configuration today? Of course not, because I'm doing a lot of video editing and I'm doing a lot of photo editing. But the majority of the people that I talk to don't do that at all. They do these very simple tasks, and those tasks would run just fine, not only on a 2015 Mac Mini at the base configuration, but even on my 2009, early 2009 Mac Mini. So for all those naysayers out there, I'd say think about who wants to buy these machines. If you're a person who just wants a simple setup, maybe you already have a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse from a burnt out Windows computer, you can just plug in this little box and you have a fully functioning computer that's going to probably last for many, many years, because again, my Mac Mini is now 6 years old, over 6 years old, and it still works pretty well. So with that, I'd like to say have a great day, and if you get some time, please give my podcast a listen. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. You can find it on iTunes and other podcatching sites, and take care.